So back with another video in this series. My video on China didn't get a whole lot of views, so I'm not sure how this one is going to do. But this is the stuff I'm interested in making, so be it. My Twitter followers voted to see a video on Mexico, so that's what I'm going to do. I included Mexico in that poll because I was very interested in seeing what anime and manga culture is like in North America's third nation that often gets left out of conversations by the rest of the world. I want to thank 2 Discord servers that helped me get some answers and details for this video. They answered a lot of my questions despite the language barrier, so shout out to Discord Mexico and La Cueva de los Frikis for their contributions to this video. Without further ado, let's get into it. From what I've managed to observe, anime and manga has managed to solidify a presence in Mexico from about the 90s onwards, much like the rest of North America. There are communities of fans, large-scale conventions such as La Mole, which started small in 1996 but grew to be one of Mexico's primary cons every year for anything nerd-related. There are also gatherings at the legendary FRIKI Plaza in Mexico City, which is almost a pilgrimage site for Mexican anime and manga fans. To trace the origins of this phenomenon, we need to go back a few decades. Mexico received its first real anime injection around the same time most of the rest of the world did, in the 1980s. But it wasn't the juggernaut Astro Boy that took the stage. Surprisingly, Candy Candy, a 1970s shoujo series, was the first series to win over Mexican audiences, receiving a broadcast and dub as far back as 1980. You can almost consider it the first hit in Mexico. The series was apparently dubbed in Argentina for Latin American audiences. The 1980 version of Astro Boy didn't get broadcasted in Mexico until 1991, in which it received a dub that was based out of Mexico. Speaking of the 1990s, the anime that really brought anime and manga to Mexico was Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is a huge deal in Mexico, potentially the place that loves the series the most outside of Japan. The first dub and broadcast of Dragon Ball actually failed in Mexico, as they made localization changes that didn't resonate with the audience. Clover Way handled the new dub until the last 93 episodes, in which current Spanish dubbing juggernaut Intertrack took over. The series overall was a huge hit and remains a cult classic in Mexico today. Intertrack is basically the Funimation of Mexico, dubbing Mexico's favorite anime titles into Spanish for Mexican and Latin American audiences. They've handled series such as Cardcaptor Sakura, Digimon, Sailor Moon, Slam Dunk, Captain Tsubasa, and Pokemon. They also dubbed tons of Disney movies. The 90s also saw the meteoric rise of Captain Tsubasa, also known as Supercampeones in Latin America. Of course, Mexico was no exception to this. The series broadcasted from 1994 to 1997 initially. Of course, most of Latin America loving soccer already, Captain Tsubasa was basically a shoo-in for success, and it's inspired a myriad of Latin American soccer players ever since. Captain Tsubasa was dubbed by Sonomex, a company originating in the 1970s which had a long history of dubbing series from all across the world. Their anime resume was quite small though, with the only other notable series on their CV being Doraemon and Astro Boy before they folded in 2004. Sticking on the topic of voice acting, if I use Dragon Ball as a jumping off point, since it's the biggest and most popular series in the country, Mexican voice actors and actresses have some interesting things going on. The Mexican-Spanish voice of Goku, Mario Castaneda, only has 2 other anime roles to his name, Nefrite in Sailor Moon, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Hidan in Naruto. The voice of Piccolo, Carlos Segundo, only has other Dragon Ball characters to his name, Shen, Popo, and Kami, as well as Hibiki Morino in Naruto. The voice of Bulma, Rocio Garcel, only voices Astro Boy and Luna in Sailor Moon. Rene Garcia, the voice of Vegeta, also voices Kisame in Naruto, Jadit in Sailor Moon, again sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I've never seen Sailor Moon, and Silver in Pokemon Chronicles. The rest of the roles of those VO artists that I just mentioned consist of Disney stuff, American cartoons, and live-action dubbing. So it seems most of the popular voices in Dragon Ball are not typecast into mostly anime roles like our voice actors here in the USA and Canada. The people that actually do a good amount of anime are Luis Daniel Ramirez, the voice of Krillin, who also voices Daisuke and Angemon in Digimon, Oob, Vegeta Jr. and Yajirobe as well in Dragon Ball, Koichi Zenigata in Lupin, and male Ranma in Ranma 1/2. Gerardo Rayado, voice of Frieza, is Jushiro Ukitake in Bleach, Devimon and male Birdramon in Digimon. Naruto is also a pretty big deal in Mexico, and the 2 primary voices of the original young Naruto and Sasuke have a few interesting roles to their names. The original voice of Part 1 Naruto only has a few other anime to her name. Isabel Martinon, voiced young Ichigo in Bleach, Ed in Cowboy Bebop, and Mimi and Patamon in Digimon. Not the most extensive anime dubbing career, but pretty impressive to be both Naruto and Ichigo, as well as a major character in the Digimon Adventure series. The original voice of Part 1 Sasuke, Adolfo Moreno, is also Satoshi in Pokemon and Kiyomaru in Zatch Bell. Even less credits, but equally as impressive considering he's a main character in 3 long-running shonen series. Finally, the voice of Sakura, Christine Baird, actually has a decent amount of anime credits to her name. She's also Karin in Bleach, Shion Hibiki in Zatch Bell, Yunko Morikata in Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Nanami Kiryu in Revolutionary Girl Utena. So the state of anime voice acting in Mexico is a very diverse one. It seems that anime does not have a consistent set of recognizable voices like we do in North America with Funimation and Ocean actors and actresses. And it seems that voice actors and actresses are a lot less typecast into certain kinds of shows. But there still seems to be a few anime stalwarts. Of course, I've only scratched the surface here, as I've used actors and actresses in Dragon Ball and Naruto as a basis for research. Trying to find out common voice actors will take me forever, since I'm not a Spanish speaker nor do I live in Mexico. The reason I know so many English and Japanese voices is because I got accustomed to listening to those dubs over time, so the knowledge came naturally. If there are any other notable Spanish voices worth mentioning, please let me know in the comments. I mentioned how Naruto was also a big deal, and that brings us to the other series that have gained some serious traction in Mexico. Pokemon, Digimon, Inuyasha, and Sailor Moon are also among the most popular. This has become aided by more accessible TV, the rise of the internet, and now smartphones and streaming services such as Crunchyroll and Netflix, which are readily available. Speaking of TV, the response to the rise in anime spawned a few channels that dedicated themselves mostly to anime. In 1996, Locomotion was launched by the Hearst Corporation based in New York to attempt to broadcast anime and animation to Latin American audiences. This project made way for Animax in 2005, owned by Sony, and based out of Japan, of course. They attempted to basically do the same thing. In 2011, they then attempted to make a 24-hour anime channel called Sony Spin, but only lasted until 2014. Today, it seems like anime is broadcasted on local networks in individual Latin American countries, and many anime in Mexico are broadcast on Channel 5 today. In terms of manga, many series are of course pirated, like the rest of the world. But as far as official licensing for manga goes, Panini provides legitimate sources to read and purchase manga. Panini is an Italian company well known for their stickers and cards, but they have a comics division which provides Mexico with its manga. Mexico likes most of the same manga as the rest of the Western Hemisphere, but according to Wikipedia at least, Robot Girl I was enjoyed particularly in Mexico. And recently it's been shown that Beastars is the best-selling manga currently in Mexico, so that's definitely interesting. If these sources are to be believed, Mexico has a unique taste in manga that isn't totally like everyone else's. There's also always been a community of Mexican comic creators that provide content for the local population. These creators have been overtaken by American and Japanese comics in the 1990s, but instead of completely die out, a lot of these creators have adapted to the new situation, and a niche community of Mexican manga has actually taken shape, apparently called Manga Mex. It's not as formidable as American anime-esque or Chinese animation and manhwa, but there is a following for it. And now a Netflix original anime, which is set in Mexico, has been creating a little bit of a buzz in Mexico. This series is set in 1970s Mexico and features Mexican characters who know martial arts. Well, that's what I got for Mexico. If you found this interesting, please leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and take care.